Hello, I'm Luna Celestine. And if you're a Gemini, if there's a part of your soul that has always felt pulled in multiple directions, always thinking, always moving, always wondering what else life could be, then this message is for you. Today, we're not here to repeat the usual surface-level descriptions you've heard 100 times before. We're not here to talk about how curious or talkative you are. We're here to go deeper. This is about the sacred gifts, 7 of them, that were planted in your spirit by something far greater than this world. Gifts designed specifically for the Gemini path, and gifts that hold a purpose far beyond what most people see on the outside. This is not a list of traits meant to flatter you. It's a reflection of what has always lived quietly underneath the restlessness, underneath the fast thoughts, underneath the endless need to connect and understand. Because Gemini, your mind may be quick, but your soul is old. And the truth is, you've been carrying a different kind of wisdom on. That doesn't always come in stillness, but in motion. In this video, we're going to name each of these 7 divine gifts one by one. Not just so you can recognize them, but so you can begin to live from them more fully. So take a breath, not to slow down who you are, but to come home to it. And when you're ready, let's begin. Your first gift, Gemini, is your presence. And it's not just about how you speak or what you say, but the feeling you bring into a space the moment you arrive. You have a kind of natural magnetism that doesn't always make sense to others. 1 minute, you're asking questions that spark curiosity in everyone around you. And the next, you're pulling people into conversations they didn't even know they needed. There's something electric about you. Not staged, not planned, just alive. You don't need to force attention. It follows you because your energy moves like air. It stirs things, lifts things, shifts things. And it's not just charisma, it's movement. People feel more awake around you, more alert, more possibility. They don't always know why, but they remember how you made them feel. That's your magic. It's not loudness, it's resonance. And when you let yourself move freely, when you stop editing your energy to make others comfortable, that's when your full magnetism shines through. Because Gemini, you weren't made to blend in. You were made to stir the still waters and remind people that there's more to feel, more to ask, more to imagine. Your second gift is the kind of courage that rarely gets acknowledged, because it doesn't look like standing still and holding the line. It looks like changing course when your soul says to, even when no one else understands why. Gemini, your bravery is in your flexibility. It's in the way you let go of what no longer fits. It's in the moment you say, this path doesn't work for me anymore, and have the guts to try something else. The world often tells you to pick one thing and stick to it, but your spirit knows better. You have the courage to evolve, to shed skin, to begin again. That takes a different kind of strength, not the kind that clings, but the kind that trusts movement. You've walked away from places that didn't see you. You've questioned things that others just accepted. And you've kept going, even when you were misunderstood. Even when people said you were scattered. When in truth, you were just growing. That's your gift. The courage to stay curious. The courage to shift. The courage to ask, what if? And then go find out. You may not always be steady, but you are brave in your own way. And that bravery is exactly what opens new doors, not just for you, but for everyone who watches you do what they were too afraid to try. The third gift you carry, Gemini, is your natural leadership, but not in the traditional sense. And certainly not in the way that demands to be obeyed. You lead with your mind, with your adaptability, with your ability to connect people and ideas in ways others can't even see yet. People follow you, not because you raise your voice, but because you raise the possibility in the room. You offer options. You ask the questions no one else thinks to ask. You notice the overlooked details and the wider patterns all at once. That's not scatter, it's visionary. You lead by illuminating new paths, not enforcing old ones. And the truth is, even when you don't intend to lead, others often gravitate to your direction simply because your ideas spark movement. And your presence makes change feel a little less scary. You don't need to be in charge to be in command. Your influence works like wind. It doesn't push. It carries. It stirs thought. It shifts awareness. And people find themselves thinking differently just because you were in the room. This isn't about control. It's about awakening. And Gemini, when you stop apologizing for how your mind moves, when you trust the value of your perspective even if it doesn't match the norm, you step into a leadership that's not just intellectual, it's catalytic. You help people think for themselves. You remind them they're allowed to change. And that's leadership of the highest kind. Your fourth gift is one that runs like a current through everything you touch. Your creative intelligence, Gemini. Your creativity doesn't live in one place. It's in the way you write, speak, build, design, joke, problem solve. Even how you shift between roles and versions of yourself with ease and intention. You don't just imagine things, you reimagine them. You see how something could be flipped, stretched, retold, made lighter, made sharper, made new. Your mind is constantly weaving, remixing, layering thought with feeling and structure with spontaneity. And while others may try to contain creativity to a specific skill or art form, yours spills everywhere into your conversations, your style, your decisions, even your chaos. What others call inconsistent is actually alive. The way you make things isn't always linear, but it's vivid. It's electric. You turn observations into poetry. You turn questions into stories. You turn patterns into insights. You make the mundane feel meaningful again, not by forcing depth, but by inviting curiosity. That's your golden thread. You don't just create things that look or sound good. You create things that move. And in a world that often prizes productivity over wonder, your creative mind is a necessary interruption. A reminder that innovation doesn't always come from logic, but from play, risk, and the refusal to accept that something can't be done differently. That's your power, Gemini. Not just to think outside the box, but to ask if the box ever needed to be there at all. The fifth gift you carry, Gemini, is a generosity that often goes unspoken because it doesn't always look like a grand gesture or a well-timed act of service. Your generosity shows up in motion, in presence, in energy. You give through words, through attention, through the way you hold space for someone's story. Even when it shifts mid-sentence, you give through your ability to meet people where they are without needing them to explain themselves first. You're generous with your thoughts, your humor, your insights, the way you lighten a heavy moment without dismissing its weight. The way you drop everything to talk someone through something they didn't even know how to put into words. That's not just kindness. That's an open channel. That's a soul that knows how to pour without draining itself dry. And what makes your generosity so distinct is that you give without scripting the outcome. You don't give to fix. You give to connect. You give because something in you knows that presence alone, when it's real, when it's engaged, when it's alive, is one of the rarest currencies we have. And you know how to spend it wisely. You can light someone up just by truly listening. You can change a room's energy just by showing up fully. And even though you may sometimes feel misunderstood or mislabeled as scattered, the people who've experienced the full force of your attention know better. They know you leave something behind that lingers not in what you gave, but in how you gave it. This is royal generosity in your own language. It's not about offering more than you have. It's about sharing the energy that runs through you so freely, so abundantly. When you feel safe and seen, and when you let that generosity flow, when you stop second-guessing whether it's enough or too much, you create ripples that move far beyond what you can track. You start conversations that become healing. You offer presence that becomes permission. You remind people that being generous doesn't always mean giving things, it means giving yourself in the moments that matter most. And that, Gemini, is a gift this world forgets how to receive until you show up and remind them. The sixth gift you carry, Gemini, is your radiant joy, and it's not the kind that needs everything to be perfect. It's the kind that bubbles up in between the cracks, in the middle of uncertainty, in the pauses of life, when others might fall silent. Your joy isn't loud for the sake of being seen, it's spontaneous, genuine, and often surprising. Even to you. You have this ability to find light in the middle of chaos, to laugh at the absurdity without dismissing the pain, to bring levity into conversations that feel too heavy to hold alone. That's not just personality, that's medicine. Your joy is contagious, not because you force positivity, but because you offer permission. Permission to feel more than one thing at once. Permission to be human and hopeful at the same time. And this joy of yours sits not shallow. It's layered. It comes from seeing many sides of a story. From having touched both wonder and worry. And still choosing to lean toward what lifts. You don't deny the dark, you just refuse to let it steal the playfulness you know we all need to survive. And when you show up with that sparkle in your voice, that curiosity in your tone, that mischief that says, let's look at this differently. People don't just smile, they soften. They remember that life, even when it's messy, is still something worth showing up for. That's your gift. That's your frequency. You remind us that joy doesn't have to be permanent to be powerful. It just has to be real. And finally, Gemini, we come to your seventh and deepest gift, your internal royalty. This isn't about image. It's not about having the answers or looking like you've got it all together. It's about the unshakable sense of value that lives at your core, even when everything else feels uncertain. Beneath the movement, beneath the questions, beneath the shifting of your many selves, there is something that does not move. A center, a knowing, a quiet recognition of your own worth that doesn't ask for permission to exist. You might not always feel it, especially in a world that rewards certainty more than curiosity, but it's there. It always has been. This internal royalty is what keeps you grounded when your thoughts spin fast. It's what allows you to walk into unfamiliar spaces and still feel like you belong. It's what helps you bounce back, not because you're unaffected, but because you remember that no experience, no mistake, no opinion from the outside can erase the truth of who you are on the inside. You were not meant to be contained. You were meant to explore, to evolve, to shift form again and still know, at every stage, that you are whole, that you are worthy, that you are allowed to take up space, even if you take it in many forms. That, Gemini, is your royalty, not in being one thing forever, but in owning everything you are, and everything you are still becoming. And when you live from that place, not from pressure, not from performance, but from truth, your presence becomes liberating. Others feel free around you because you are free within yourself. You don't just adapt, you expand. And in doing so, you become not just a mirror, but a map for those still trying to find their way back to themselves. So as we close this journey, Gemini, I want you to pause, not to quiet your thoughts, but to hear them differently. Every gift we named today wasn't something you had to earn, prove, or perfect. It was written into you. From the beginning, your ability to connect, to shift, to bring lightness into heavy moments, to lead with questions instead of answers, to create from movement instead of stillness. These aren't flaws or inconsistencies. They are sacred design. You were never meant to be simple. You were never meant to be still. You were meant to be felt in many forms, to show up in ways that break patterns, soften expectations, and spark change in places that didn't even know they were asleep. Gemini, you may have spent parts of your life being misunderstood, called too much, too fast, too scattered, but what if those were just signs that you were always tuned into a different frequency, one that the world didn't quite have words for, but deeply needed? What if your role wasn't to choose one version of yourself, but to hold space for all of them? That is your mastery. That is your truth. And the more you stop trying to explain it, the more you'll realize you were never supposed to be one thing. You were supposed to be a bridge, a spark, a shift in the atmosphere. So walk forward, not with the need to settle into something final, but with the trust that your movement is the message. Your questions are the medicine, and your energy, even when it changes, still holds the same light. Stay curious. Stay connected. Stay true to your rhythm, even when it's hard to explain. Because the world doesn't need another fixed identity. It needs someone brave enough to keep becoming. Until next time, keep flowing, keep growing, and above all, keep showing us how alive it is to be a Gemini.